everyone, this is Jane with Barlow Herbal, and today is Sunday, December 31st of 2023, the last day of the year. Now, if you're like me, this is usually a time of reflection where we look back on the year, we think about what we're grateful for, we think about what we want to accomplish in the coming year. And for me, what I did is I actually spent this week looking back at all the things during the last year in the journals that I've written. And I didn't just go back one journal. This journal actually is full, and I had to go back to another journal as well. And I thought what I would do is just kind of gather some of the best little nuggets of things that really resonated with me and share them with you. Now, if you are on my email list, then there's a little note on the PS that accompanied this video. And if you're not on my email list, there's a link below, just go over to our website and sign up, because I share a few things there that I don't share in the video. But I had a pretty intense situation happen, and it's still ongoing, but this has been really interesting to me because during these last couple weeks, which have been a little bit of a roller coaster emotionally, I find myself so grateful for my meditation practice, which has really been a game changer, and for the different belief systems and the willingness to look at my belief systems as my consciousness evolves and release the ones that don't serve me. So even if I have a belief system that served me at the beginning of 2023, and now at the end of 2023 it doesn't anymore because my perspective has changed, maybe the things I've looked at have changed, I've had a conversation with somebody, it's a sign of intelligence when you can reimagine and reinvent your belief systems. And maybe even the biggest word is to release them, right? So what I've done is I've gone through my journals for this last year, and I've just grabbed a couple of nuggets that I want to share with you. Now, before I do that, this time of year always brings an interesting reflection to me personally, because on January 1st, my dad passed away. So tomorrow will be 26 years, so January 1st, since he transitioned to the next life. And the interesting thing about this year is the age I am now, which is 62, is the same age my dad was when he passed away. So this has been a really fascinating year for me when I turned 62 earlier this year, and I was like, wow, I knew my dad wasn't that old, but when you're in your 30s, your 60s seem like okay, because you hear about people passing away in their 60s all the time, and it just gives you a different reflection point when you actually reach the age that one of your parents was when they passed away. And in my case in particular, I was very close to my dad, as were many of my siblings. He spent a good chunk of the last part of his life a little bit distracted. If I'm being honest, he had a lot of things going on as well. But the purpose he had and the passion for the things that he did and the people that he was able to affect never left him. So it's one of those things that at the end of the year, I know I always have a deep reflection and a deep gratitude for simply being born to the dad that I was born to. He taught me about what it means to be an American and how to be grateful for our Constitution. Like, this was part of the verbiage of us growing up, and it wasn't us, necessarily sitting down and saying, all right, I'm going to tell you about the Constitution. This was part of the everyday conversations, the things that we got to listen to him talk to other, adults about, and my dad's family. He was the second oldest of 7 kids, and one of his brothers actually went into politics in Idaho, where we grew up, and was I think he was a representative. And this brother has since passed on as well. But this was something that was just ingrained in us, along with the religion and the compassion we were raised Christian, we were raised Mormon, myself and all my siblings. And it was, so none of this stuff was like, we're going to sit down and teach you a lesson. This was just infused into everything that not just my dad did, but my mom as well. This was the way that they raised us. And so one of the things that I'm mostly grateful for is my dad and the amazing gift that he left and that I am so blessed to carry on. And has it been a little bit intense at times and a lot of hard work all the time? Yeah, but you know what? I think we come down here to experience and learn the hard stuff, right? Yeah, so, that to me is a beautiful reflection time, just to kind of give thanks and give grace to myself, knowing that I'm a human being having this experience, and I'm not perfect. I make mistakes, and the goal is to learn from them. And the goal is to, maybe share pieces of what I learned to maybe help others along their path, or maybe just give little nuggets of like, okay, I relate to that, and I can see that perspective, and it's a beautiful time to be flexible and to be willing to change and to be willing to say, hey, I made a mistake and I'm sorry. I think that the human ego gets in the way sometimes, and we dig in and we're stubborn, and I'm stubborn as they come. I'm a Taurus, and I am stubborn. I will dig in my heels. But one of the things that I learned a long time ago is it's so much easier to forgive, to move on, and sometimes forgive yourself. Actually, that's one of the most important things. But learn to say you're sorry. That is one of the most freeing things that you can ever do. So, with all that being said, I want to just kind of go through. I put some little markers in some of the pages of the things that I just wanted to share with you. This might feel like a little bit of a random mishmash of ideas and video, or of just the things that I'm sharing, but I hope that some of these maybe resonate with you too. So the first thing that when I was going through this, and I thought, oh, this one is a good one to share, is this: give yourself grace. You didn't know what you didn't know. You did the best you could with the information you had. You trusted the system. Okay? Now that really applies to me right now. I think I wrote this back in the fall, and I don't date my journal. I just simply write. So to me, this was like, give myself grace. So I'm saying to all of you, give yourself grace. You didn't know what you didn't know. And this is how we get better and grow. And in reality, there's no such thing as perfectionism, right? Okay, so that was the very first thing. And then right shortly after that, I wrote this: choose the reality you would like to be in right now. The new earth is a shift into a new level of consciousness. That's what that is. It doesn't mean we're going to go to a parallel universe. It might feel that way. And at the end of the day, who really knows? But I can already see the split of people who still believe all the mainstream propaganda and information that comes at them from all the screens and all the stuff. And I can see other people who are definitely awakened. And you can literally tell them who these people are when you're out somewhere. And this has been one of the biggest gifts. So choose the reality you would like to be in right now. Remember that we are eternal spiritual beings. We forget sometimes that we've logged into this life for experience. I've been doing a lot of research lately on the idea that the world we're living in is a simulation. Okay, and that might sound wacky, and wow, that's a rabbit hole to go down to, right? But it seems like this experience is, many times we forget that we're logged in to this life for the experience. We came here to remember who we are. There's many things that we can't experience unless we have this physical body. So as we wake up more and more and we think, wow, the world is getting crazier, but no, the world has always been crazy. It's just different. It's just different kind of crazy. We are becoming more aware and more awake of the reality of the old systems. I think honestly, from my perspective, we're reaching a tipping point. And that's why I think this coming year is really going to be so pivotal. You hear all the things happening in politics. You hear all the things happening with, the people who want to put a one world government in place, and you hear all this stuff. And I will tell you, during the last almost 4 years, I've spent a lot of time not only going down rabbit holes, but watching things that reiterate and reiterate and reiterate. And to be honest, I'm not done learning or growing or finding out new things, but I do feel very done keeping the information plugged into my own personal experience, so it just confirms it and confirms it and confirms it. I think that's a whole other way of staying stuck in the system, because now you're in just a different system, and you're in a system, I believe, that can be just as fearful. Because here's the thing, are the systems that are out there controlling us, all the things, do they make you have a bit of fear to them once it might be easier once you've stepped out of them and realized what they're all about. But here's the thing, what I found is, as I've started to watch all of these different alternative news channels and YouTube channels and things on Rumble and things that people would send me, it would elicit a new kind of fear that was a fear of uncertainty and a fear of slavery and a fear of, not having freedom and sovereignty, and, it elicited a whole nother fear. And here's the thing, fear looks like fear. It doesn't matter what you're afraid of. The emotion of fear is still there. And on the scale of consciousness, fear resonates so low. The Hawkins scale of consciousness, which goes from 0 to 1,000, when you reach 200, and they have means of measuring this, is a beautiful scale, something to definitely look into. But when you actually get to the emotion of courage, you are at 700. In fact, I actually keep a little printed thing of the scale of consciousness by my desk. And courage resonates at 200, which is affirmation, and your view of life is that it's feasible, right? But here's what goes down below that. So you have pride at 175, you have anger at 150, desire at 125, and fear resonates on the scale of consciousness at 100. And they have different methods of technology, kinesiology, applied kinesiology, whatever, where they can literally measure the levels of consciousness of not only different human beings, but different entities, businesses, systems, where it's a beautiful thing. In fact, what I would suggest that you look at is the work of Dr. David Hawkins. And one of my favorite books is called Power versus Force. I'll put a link down below where you can probably find it on Amazon. Super easy. I've read that several times. But what is underneath fear is grief. Grief resonates and vibrates at a low 75. We have apathy at 50, we have guilt at 30, and then the lowest here is shame, which just simply sits down very bottom, almost at 0 at 20. Now what's above courage, and this is really cool, is neutrality is at 250. So basically you're just neutral. You're not in any of the, lower, super low, energies and consciousness of shame and guilt and fear and all that. But you're just kind of neutral. You're neutral. Right above neutrality is 310 at willingness, which, okay, I'm willing to look at maybe there's something else, something better, something more beautiful. And that's where I want to resonate, right? Right above willingness is acceptance, which measures at 350. Reason measures at 400. So when you're in a place of reason, where you can think of something that you maybe had was a deep belief system, and you start to find new information, and rather than just holding on to those old belief systems, you now have the ability to reason, and that actually is fairly high on the scale of consciousness. Now right above reason is pure love. Now love resonates at 500, which is interesting because if you've got a scale of 0 to 1,000, then you've got love right in the middle, and that's high. And think about how you feel when you're simply vibrating the consciousness of pure love. And that's awesome. So what's above love? So above love at 540 is joy. Think about how when you're experiencing just pure joy, maybe at your wedding or your daughter's wedding or the birth of your child, that might even be higher. I remember how I felt when I had my 2 boys. It was amazing. So above joy is peace, which measures at 600. And then between 700 and 1,000, at the very top, we have enlightenment. And basically, the associated emotional state is ineffable, and the view of life is just one word, and that is. It is what it is. It is what it is, right? And you reach that point where something happens that seems really devastating, that can spiral you into fear. And I will put the experience that I've had in the middle of December, I would put that up there as something that could have spiraled me into fear. And the interesting thing is, all the work that I've been doing and all of, and I don't mean this to be egotistical, but I feel like if I hadn't been doing the spiritual growth, been willing to be flexible, be willing to really expand on my belief systems and sometimes release belief systems, that I would not be in the state of being that I am right now. I feel right now peace. I feel joy. I believe that through all hard things comes much beauty and much joy. And what I'm actually calling this is a small bump in the universe. This is a small bump. And if I can maintain this, which I will be honest, it's not been a consistent. There have been little dips where I've been like, holy moly, what is happening? But I literally named this. So all of the emails and all the things that I'm putting into a folder, I named the folder a small bump in the universe. And it reminds me that this is a small blip. And if we can look at these things as that, we can maintain our high levels of consciousness, which I absolutely love. Okay, so we are becoming aware and awake of the old reality system. We can now make a choice about which reality we want to live in. This is exactly what I was talking about. We can individually choose which reality system we'll experience our life in. For me, I want to experience life as a vibrantly healthy human being. I don't want to experience life in the hospital system, in the pharmaceutical system. That's not how I want to experience it. And other people they feel comfortable there. And I have no judgment for that. So we get to choose individually the experience we want to have in this life. We can create a ripple in the collective consciousness. And to me, that's pretty cool, right? That we can individually create a ripple. Okay, so I'm going to kind of end with some of these thoughts that I just barely wrote down this week. So last week I asked the question, what's the best thing that can happen? And what I did this week, at the very first of the week, is I sat down with this journal and with this situation that I'm dealing with, and I literally wrote down a list. I didn't just think it in my mind. I sat and wrote down, what is the worst that can happen? And then I wrote down a list next to it of what is the best that can happen. And you know what was really fascinating to me is the worst that was that I thought could happen was little. My list was short. And the list that was what's the best thing that can happen, my imagination and my creativity and what I know is possible as any human being on this world went crazy. It was like the funnest experience. And I would honestly say, take any situation that you feel is bad and you feel, or maybe it starts out kind of feeling that way and it can seem really dire, and write a list. What is the worst thing that can happen because of this? What's the best thing that can happen because of this? And it's really powerful. So when I got through that exercise, I shut my journal and I have this routine where I'll get on my elliptical, I'll lift weights, I do some type of exercise. And on that particular day, it was Monday, that was my hour session on the elliptical. And one of the favorite things I like to do is listen to a podcast, watch a YouTube video is something that interests me, expands my horizons, expands my consciousness. I have a few friends that have YouTube channels, so I like to tune in and log into them and see what they're doing. So on this particular day, after I wrote down this list, I got on the elliptical and I started exercising. And I had my phone, but I didn't turn it on yet to watch anything. And I kind of just had this like a little bit of a moment where I had a little bit of a heavy on my heart with what's happening. And I said out loud, "Oh, Dad, oh my goodness," and immediately in front of me, my dad was just right there. And he had this huge grin on his face. And I was just kind of like, it made me laugh out loud because I'm like, okay, that moment I was taking myself way too seriously. I was putting this heavy thing on my heart, and it didn't have to be that way. So it was just this beautiful reminder that when we open ourselves up to any possibility, and I believe our loved ones, their essence, their spirit, their consciousness, we can invoke them. They can come and give us hope and can visit us and let us know everything is going to be okay. And not just that, have fun while you're down here. Have fun while you're experiencing this. This is something that is like, we're here to experience. And the good things and the bad things and the little bumps in the universe, they're all part of it. They're all part of it. That was so amazing. And then another thing that I wrote down, that really, this is just something that came into my mind while I was continuing after my dad gave me his big old huge grin and was like, everything's going to be fine, Jane, just you do you and everything's going to be good. I was sitting there thinking about it. I still hadn't turned on anything to watch. And I really have some of my best thought moments when I'm on my elliptical. In fact, I keep my journal on a little stand right next to it, so with a pen. And sometimes I'll make a quick note because I want to remember these things. But I had an interesting thought, and I was reminded of this from this little experience with my dad. So let me just explain. Okay, so 2 years ago, I had a session with a QHHT hypnotherapist. Now, QHHT stands for Quantum Healing Hypnosis Therapy or Technique. I think it's technique. So quantum healing hypnosis technique or therapy. And I had this beautiful session. It was March of 2021. So it's been almost 2 years. And I was feeling all the feels, all the stuff that was happening on the planet, and all the crazy, crazy stuff like everyone else. I was feeling that. And we were a year in. We were a year in at that point, from the lockdowns in 2020 to March of 2021. That was a very difficult year for me, and so I found this woman, a friend of mine who has had a couple sessions with her over the years. I went on her website and I made an appointment, and basically, most of the time it takes you back into past experiences or past lives. And if that's a little bit unsettling for you to, hear, it's okay. This is just my own experience with this. But what was the biggest thing for me is there was a moment toward the end of this session, and it was a 2-hour session. It was remote, and I was in my home, and she was in her home in another state. And she was guiding me through this beautiful hypnosis, quantum healing hypnosis. It was a beautiful, beautiful session. And one of the last things that really came in is I was pure energy. And I zoomed up out of where I was, and I was just above the planet. And there's more details to me being there, but what happened is I wrapped all of my energy, all of my consciousness, all of who I am in essence as a endless consciousness, if you will. And I literally wrapped myself around Mother Earth, and I was holding her and hugging her. And it was a beautiful experience. And when you have these things, this experience like I had, you don't forget. Like this is part of you. And what happened with me is I didn't forget. I remember this like this session happened yesterday, because this is a higher part of me. But as I was having this moment on my elliptical machine, my dad came in and gave me a big smile. Then I had this remembering that I am here for a purpose, and I have the ability to wrap as many people as I can in the energy of love and the energy of healing and the gifts of Mother Nature and all of her plant medicines and all of her herbs. And I just had this huge confirmation of, whatever this little bump in the universe is happening, it's going to be quick, it's going to be resolved quickly, and it's going to help me tighten in my systems. It's going to help me become a better steward of the legacy that my dad left me. I really believe that. So a couple more things. Death comes for all of us, but life is a choice. We get to choose to live while we're here, right? Death comes to all of us. And then I'm just going to kind of finish with this. All suffering belongs to the imaginary me. And suffering ceases when the me is directly seen to be a thought. Okay, so this one was really cool. And I thought about this as I've had all these moments of suffering, because I'll tell you, especially if I always say, if you get to the end of this, then, this is maybe where I share even more personal stuff. But I had a day this week where I had that really beautiful thing on Monday with my dad and my remembering of this beautiful session I had. And then I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday, I had this moment. Everyone on my team left. I was at my warehouse. I was by myself. There was sun shining in through the window in the front part of our offices where the front door is, and I had this overwhelming sense of suffering, like this heaviness. And I laid down on the floor in this ray of sunshine because I wanted to lay in the sunshine. And I literally laid there and I just let myself cry. And after I had my little cry, I sat up and I thought this: all suffering belongs to the imaginary me. I can choose to put myself in a state of suffering. I can choose to do that. And I chose in that moment to do that. And it was actually kind of cathartic. It actually made me feel pretty good after it was all over. Because we know when we cry, we release hormones that are actually really good for us to release. When a good cry always feels good. But then I made a decision right there in the moment that all suffering belongs to the imaginary me. I get to experience that, feel it, but that's not really who I am. I'm not designed to live in suffering. And then here's what I wrote after that. And suffering ceases when the me is directly seen to be a thought. I thought about, oh, poor me in this horrible situation, and I immediately spiraled myself into suffering, right? Just a thought. And then I wrote this, although it's a very clever and convincing one. These suffering moments that we put ourselves through, they're very clever, they're very convincing, right? So my goal is to pay attention to the gap between the thoughts. So pay attention. All these thoughts, there are gaps in there. The gaps in there that are the real you, the real me. It doesn't matter where the thoughts come from. They're irrelevant if you don't identify with them. So it doesn't matter what brings those thoughts in. They become irrelevant if you don't let yourself identify with them. I mean, that is such a beautiful thing, I feel like, to take into this new year, 2024. So choose your thoughts, choose the thoughts you want to identify with, and build your own character consciously. That's my plan for this year. If I really look into my own crystal ball, and I encourage you to look into your own crystal ball in the future, look at it consciously with what is the best thing that can happen? What's the best that can come of this year? And put yourself on that path. And don't let those lower frequencies get you stuck. Turn off your TV. Stop scrolling social media. There's one thing my husband does. Every day he goes on Facebook and he looks to see who of his friends have a birthday that day. He sends them a happy birthday and then he's done. And you know what? That to me is what that's supposed to be used for. If you have a business where you run in a platform and maybe you tune into someone's business, you belong to a group that is a healing group or a group of like-minded people for whatever, like-minded things that you're looking to accomplish together. All of those things to me are exactly why these platforms were made for us. But if you find yourself caught scrolling and looking at negative things, and what you pause on goes into the algorithm and it'll show you more of those things, so you can get stuck even longer. So step yourself out of this matrix, out of this simulation that we're in, and design your life consciously. Let's make this 2024 the best ever. That's gonna be my mantra. All right, guys. Well, I hope you have an absolutely beautiful New Year's Eve, if it's New Year's Eve when you're watching this. If you're watching this later in the year, I hope that some of these little things resonate with you and you can realize the brilliance of this experience. Might even be a simulation, right? There's a beautiful philosophy that I've actually been looking at this week, a simulation theory. And it's a fascinating way to think. And here's what I just want to say at the end of this. Be willing to open your mind. Be willing to look at other perspectives. The true sign of intelligence is being able to change your beliefs. I really believe that. And I think it's a beautiful way to walk through life. So have a beautiful day. Happy New Year. Let me find where the stop button is. And thank you so much for tuning in and being with me on this crazy, beautiful journey. And we will see you in the new year.